Hello everyone at Ealing Connect, this is Steve Johnson. I just want to do a quick recap video of what we looked at last Friday in the study. We were looking at God's name, Yahweh, or as we say in Europe, Jehovah. And you may have noticed you don't really see that name in the Old Testament. And the reason for that is they usually translate it as Lord. But that name is thousands of times in the Old Testament. And we've been looking at the names of God, of sometimes Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Shammah, Jehovah Shalom. That term is the prefix to the description of some aspect of his character. The foundation is Yahweh. And we looked at Exodus chapter 3, Moses' encounter with God. He's called him to deliver Israel. And what happens? God reveals the covenant name. Okay, this is something that is applicable through all generations. So it applies to all of us that we know God in this foundational way. And we learned three things about that. Firstly, that when he says, I am that I am, he's saying, I am the unchanging self-existent one. In other words, no circumstance hinders me or changes who I am. I don't need anything. I'm God. That's what he's saying. And for Israel in the midst of slavery, their circumstances were overwhelming. They were wondering, where is God in all this? Does he care? Can he change it? And God is saying, I am that I am. I am the self-existent one. There is nothing hindering me at the time I'm going to do this. You're going to see it. And so in the midst of our own trials of COVID-19 and everything that's happening this year, we need to realize that God is the unchanging one. He hasn't changed to you. He is the self-existent one. Nothing hinders him. The only thing he needs is himself to do anything. He doesn't need us to do anything. He doesn't need us to provide something, otherwise he's somehow incapable. He is I am that I am. He says, tell them, I am has sent you, the self-existent one. There is nothing he cannot do. So that's the first thing. God reveals himself as unchanging and self-existent. That's a foundation for everything we know about God. And there are other things that we can get from there. Firstly, he is relational. Often people talk about religion, but they're not talking about relationship. And relationship in Hebrew is more than just knowing about God. The word to know is yada in Hebrew. It literally means to experience him. And Israel were going to experience him. And he said, and all Israel shall know that I am God. And they experienced him. They saw what happened to the Egyptians. They saw what happened to the firstborn. They saw what happened to their crops. And the Israelites were untouched. They were watching this stuff and thought, wow, God is real. Now we've experienced him. We've experienced what you can do. We've experienced your deliverance. We've experienced your salvation. They experience him. So relationship with God is not just about knowing some stuff. It's about experiencing him. And thirdly, he is covenantal. In other words, God approaches us. God is relational and covenantal. Those two things are two sides of the same coin. We have a society which is broken because we engage in relationships without covenant. And many families are destroyed and damaged because they have relationship without covenant. People are saying, well, I don't need marriage. What do you need that for? And we see broken homes, broken lives, and massive social consequences for our societies in the West because we have detached relationship and covenant. Those two things go together and they reflect who God is. He's a God of relationship and he's a God of covenant. Think of Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, all had a covenant with God. And the church, we have a covenant relationship with God. Every time we take communion, we are reminding ourselves of that covenant. Actually, in the original Greek, it uses the word, I think it's amnesiosis, which is where we get the word amnesia from. And literally what Jesus is saying, he says, do this in remembrance of me. Literally in the Greek, it is do this so you don't forget, so you don't get amnesia. In other words, remember this one thing. You have a covenant relationship with God. Through the broken body and the spilt blood of Christ, we have a covenant relationship with him. So God is unchanging and self-existent. He is relational. He is covenantal. The three essential basics you need to know about him. And all the names of God that we'll learn about are sitting on that foundation. So what about you is the question. How have you handled this year and its trials? Is it as if God has somehow changed? He has not changed. Behind me, as I said in the study, you can just about see the Star of David there. I have a flag of Israel. It's a testimony that, for God, for 1 day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years is 1 day, as Peter said. God made a promise, a covenant to his people Israel, and they were detached from the land for 1,900 years, but God brought them back. And I know there's some controversy in church circles about that, but I preach what I preach. I preach what the word of God says. God holds true to his word. He holds true to his covenant. Because of the covenant, he brought his people back into the land. God is unchanging and self-existent. God is relational. God is covenantal. How does that affect how you view him? How does that affect how you live for him? Big question. He's a big God, and it's important we know these things. He reveals himself as Yahweh, the covenant name. He makes a covenant, a relational covenant with us. Bless you. I look forward to this Friday. We've got another teaching, another revelation of who God is through his name. I'll see you there. God bless you.